So, welcome to our Thursday live Inspiring People. This is our very first one, so I'm very excited about this. Also, a little bit nervous. So, I set up Breathing Space Inspiring People about a week ago because I wanted to have a community where people other than just me could connect. People who have been on a breathing space breathwork journey, or people who've been on a retreat with us, or people who've stumbled across us and would like to start to be part of our community, which is growing and which is amazing. So I created this community group, and I was thinking about what would I really like to see in it. And I kind of thought I'd like to hear other people, not just my voice, but I would like to hear what other people have to say. So I thought, well, everyone who is going to be in this group is inspiring in some way or another. And so we are going to have Thursday Inspiring People. Now, the first person I've invited on is a friend of mine, a special friend, Duncan Bailey. And he is also going to be an angel in this community group. He'll be looking after some posts. He may even be doing some interviews occasionally. So let's find out why Duncan is inspiring. Let's invite him on. Now, it may just take a couple of minutes for him to join. This is also the first time I've done a live Facebook broadcast, so I hope the technology is working. I'm not completely sure it will. I've got my fingers crossed. I have no idea if anyone is going to be watching this live. This interview will also be available on Facebook. On YouTube a little bit later, because I've also just created a YouTube channel. And here is Duncan. Can you hear me okay, Duncan?
I can hear you perfectly fine.
Hello, Duncan. Well, welcome to our Thursday Inspiring People interview slot. Very excited to have you here. How are you feeling?
I am feeling excited and really curious about how this is all going to unfold. And thank you for having me, Ben.
That's all right. I obviously have a reason about this, Duncan, because fundamentally I'm very, very lazy. And I don't like working too hard. So eventually it may be you in the hot seat asking some other people questions. So I thought it was only fair that you went first.
Oh, how thoughtful of you, Ben. Thank you.
So are you ready to find out, or to let everyone else find out, why you are an inspiring person?
Yeah, I suppose I am.
Do you think you're inspiring, by the way? Do you think you are an inspiring person? Honestly?
Yes. Yes.
Amazing. Now say it loud. Say I'm an inspiring person and really mean it.
I am an inspiring person and I really mean it.
I'll give that 5 out of 10.
What?
I think you can do better than that.
Well, I have to try and be serious. Oh my gosh.
You have to mean it. You have to make me believe.
I am an inspiring person.
Much better.
I am an inspiring person.
That's pretty good, actually. I believe you now. I could feel that. Okay, so Duncan, I've got 10 questions to ask you. Okay? And the questions that I ask over time, they may change, and we might have follow-up questions, but there'll be a few questions that will appear every week. Now, my first question is, let's ask a couple of questions first. So how did you stumble across breathing space?
I went to give a talk, a 10-minute talk in Brighton, and it's part of you go in and you give a, well, actually it wasn't a 10-minute talk. Did I give a 10-minute talk? Probably gave a 5-minute talk or something. And it's called Inspiring Talks Brighton, and I met my teacher there, who also gave a talk about breathwork. And that was you, by the way, Ben. And that's what spiraled me into breathing space and breathwork, and the journey since. And I had not done nothing before that when it came to breathwork. Nothing really, except for Vipassana meditation.
And can you remember what you said when I invited you to a breath work? Shall
No,
I remind you? You
go
said,
on.
I'm not sure I want to come to a breathwork because I've got a very strong meditation practice, which is really important to me. And I'm not sure about this breathwork. It might interrupt this really important, serious practice that I have.
Yeah, I remember now. Yeah, yeah. I thought it would not necessarily go against this other practice, but it wouldn't, as in this the Vipassana practice is it's important to committing to that practice, and then to try and add several different practices can confuse us or can just doesn't make sense for them. So there's a part of me that knew that I kind of had to try it out to know if I wanted one to continue the Vipassana meditation and to see what this breath work was all about.
And that is a serious issue if you've got a really strong practice in some kind of discipline that kind of asks for exclusivity, and then you come across some other kind of modality or some other practice, that can create a real conflict, can't it?
Yeah, definitely. It can be a difficult conflict, and it can even. I know it's taken time for me to try and um, come to terms with that conflict. And I mean, I know that that sort of conflict can come up in any form or any areas of life. But for me, it was in this idea of breath work. If I was to jump into this new breath work, what would it mean to commitment, to my idea of what commitment means, as well to my idea of what doing something and mastering it nearly, what does it mean to all that? But
Hmm.
also, you have to try things to know if they're worth it. So it's that dilemma that you need to face, I suppose. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was a really important step.
it was.
Although,
Carry on.
although I do remember that I was saying this to you, and I was really saying it to myself because I already knew I was going to do this breath work with you, and maybe I had to voice it out loud just to, to say to one part of my psyche that that I didn't want to, or I don't know what was going into my head. But there's a part of me that knew I was going to do your breath work anyway.
Hmm.
Like there was just no.
Well, I do, and I've been in that situation before where I've had a very strong belief about something, where I've, had a practice. I had a Buddhist meditation practice for many years, and for me to kind of break out of that was a long and painful process, actually, and to kind of change my beliefs around that and what I wanted to do, because it was a very, I don't know, it's a very deep place I was in. So well done for doing that, and because of that, Duncan, we're here right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And that
should
was a
we?
year ago.
That was a year ago. Would you like to do another deeper question, or should we do some small talk first?
I'm up to you. I mean, I love deep questions,
Uh,
so I don't mind.
okay, we'll do another deep question then, which kind of leads on from that first one. So, we met a year ago at Inspiring Talks, and I did a breath work at the foyer in Brighton, which you came along to. And since then, you've been doing a lot of breath works. You have breathed a lot. So your next question is, I'd like you to tell me about a powerful experience that you've had, or a gift that you have received, or perhaps a revelation that you have had during a breathwork session. So that's a powerful experience, a gift you have received, or a revelation that you have had. Tell us about something that's
Um,
happened in a breathwork session for you.
Probably a powerful experience was, and at the moment it comes when I do most 1 hour breath work, or it seems to come when you're facilitating for the time being. But the biggest experience was to be allowed, permitted to be vulnerable. Uh, And it's nearly like I wish I could put it in more words than that. And really, it was through that 1 hour breathwork journey that you were doing that I was, and maybe this is another word, I was permitted to let go of having to carry responsibilities, to have duties, and I could surrender that through this breathing practice. And I was allowed to feel like I was scared and I was vulnerable. And rather than to, stand up and play a role, I was just permitted to take off all the things that, all my identities that I need to create when I interact in this world. I could take all of that off and just, surrender and be vulnerable. Those are the two most amazing things that I love about the breath work. And then, of course, a feeling of connection, not just to myself, but also to all the people around me, express through compassion.
Surrendering and being vulnerable. That's not something that we get to feel very much. What does that feel like for you? Surrendering and being vulnerable.
It's really like a release. It always comes up through doing the breath work. Comes up as having tears, crying, and just going, "It's okay," and maybe it's, from my perspective, it's like letting go, and so it's surrendering and letting go. It's like, okay, it's just out of my hands, and I don't. So hard to put into words. So hard to put into words.
And what about that feeling of connection, which also has been powerful for you?
It's just, I say compassion, connection, and love, and there's like a mixture of all of those. So I don't know which one it is, but it just feels like it must be connected to that feeling of being permitted to be vulnerable for me, and then that ability to be authentic, and then that way I can really have a genuine connection with people. There's nothing to hide, and then I can feel like I can connect.
And how is that feeling of connection different to just, having a chat with a friend over a coffee, or, going around someone's house for dinner? How is that different in a breath work?
It's like, it's nearly like it's you're connected maybe emotionally, and it's like you've known that person. You've known that person for years. The judgment falls away. You don't need to be judged, and you don't need to judge that other person. They are just who they are. It doesn't matter, and that everything's okay. And it's really like an emotional experience, or a sensual and emotional experience, not an intellectual one.
So it's a sensual, emotional experience without any judgment, and everything is going to be okay.
Yeah. And whoever you are and however you are, and it's all about, and it's also so much kind of gentleness. There's, we use words like grace and gentleness and peace, but it's an experience of those words. Those words express what's experienced, and you experience the meaning of those words. Maybe when I do a breath work, I experience the meaning of those words. I experience the meaning of grace, and I experience the meaning of compassion. It's so more exciting than just a word, them experiencing them. Oh my god!
Wow, I love that. So it's not just a word, it's not just an intellectual, it is an experience.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we should take a breath with that, Duncan, don't you? We haven't had a
Yeah,
breath
why not?
together.
Good
We didn't
idea.
start with a breath. I can't believe it. Let's have a breath now, though, with everything so far.
Okay.
And if you are watching this live, or even if you're watching this on a recording, would you like to take and I'm speaking to people out there watching this, not you, Duncan, should we just take 2 more breaths together? Okay, let's ask some. Let's just look at a few get to know you questions, Duncan. Let's take this a little lighter. So, tell me your full name.
My full name is Duncan Charles Perpignani Bailey, and my nickname is Pepe.
Pepe. What's my nickname for you?
What's your nickname for me? I can't think of it.
Guignol.
Oh, Guignol. Oh my gosh, yes, Guignol.
which is a bit like he's a Mr. Punch character from French theatre, because Duncan is also a massive, in the nicest possible way, he's a very naughty fool because he loves playing around. So, say your full name again, Duncan.
My full name is Duncan Charles Perpignani Bailey.
Which you've got an interesting middle name there. So, tell us about where you were born and a bit about your background.
I am born and raised in Hong Kong in the late 70s. So I'm born in 78. I have a twin brother, an older sister. My mum is Italian. She's born in Egypt. My dad is English. And that's the quick summary of who I am. Oh, I went to a French school as a kid.
So
Go ahead.
your mother tongue is French.
So my mother tongue is French. Yeah.
What an
And
amazing
all
mixture
my
you are.
education is in French. Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
well, I mean, that is an amazing mixture to have all of that heritage within you. You get to be an amazing alchemical soup of a man, which I'm very jealous of, to have all that exotic blood and history within you, because I'm a boring gutter snipe. But anyway, where do you live now?
Now I live in Brighton. Hove, actually.
You live in Hove, actually. And tell us about today. What's happening today?
Today it's raining and grey outside. My daughter has missed school because she's ill. I have worked from home. My wife is away on a 3-day meditation retreat.
And there's nothing else happening in the world today or in England.
There's something about voting, some important political changes, something happening that's important. Yeah, yeah.
Um, I'm in Canada and I feel very disconnected from the election here, which I'm not unhappy about, to be honest. But anyway, in fact, let's have a breath with all of that madness and all that chaos going on in the election and all the division and wounding that it's causing for
Mm.
many people on all sides. So let's just have a breath with that before we move on. Just to acknowledge that. So you're in Brighton, you're in your early 40s, you grew up somewhere exotic, you've got an exotic family, you've got a daughter and a wife. Let's find out a little bit more about you. So, what is worth dying for, Duncan?
That's a good question. What is worth dying for? I'm seeing it as, who would I give my life to, or what would I do that I would allow my life ending? And the only two things that's popping into my head is my wife and my daughter.
Your wife and your daughter are worth dying for.
Oh yeah, without hesitation.
Without hesitation, you would die for your wife and daughter.
Yeah.
Okay. And related, but what is worth living for? That's not a question we ask so much.
What is worth living for? Oh my gosh, that's a tough question. I mean, it nearly comes back to that same. Today, what's worth living for is being an inspiration, being a support and a guide to my wife and daughter, especially to my daughter.
being a
Yeah.
guide for your daughter. That's being a father, isn't it?
Yeah. Being a father.
That sounds like it is
Yeah.
the most important thing to you.
It is. The most important thing is being a father.
And you know, I mean, this is called inspiring people, Duncan. And just hearing you say that, and when you say that, there is a gravity to your voice, and all the traces of the foolishness and the playfulness and the silliness that kind of falls away. And when you say that, like it hits me right here. That is really inspiring to hear that.
Thank you.
So, what compliment would you most like to be said about you?
I thought this through. What compliment? Um, for a while, I'm thinking, oh well, compliments. How much do people? What I really like people say about me or compliment me about is when they say that, Duncan, there's something special about you, and I think that's what I really like. There's just something special about you. That's my favorite compliment by far.
Something special about you, Duncan. Okay. But what criticism would you least like said about you?
That I'm selfish.
You're selfish.
Yeah.
And are you selfish?
A part of me believes I'm very selfish. Yeah.
A part of
And
you
that's
believes you are
and
selfish. I'm going to invite you to own that, Duncan, and
well,
say that properly.
I am selfish.
That's better. Because
And
we always
actually
hate.
it's actually there's two words. For me, it's selfish and self-centered. And I only think that I can't help being those two things. And part of what I'm trying to do is not become those two things. But how can I not be self-centered? Because everything is centered around who I am. So how can I not be selfish? Because everything is centered around who I am. And yet I don't like these things.
Why not?
I don't want to be. I don't know. I think maybe because when somebody says to me that I'm selfish, it's in a form of criticism,
So you don't
not
get
from a.
permission. So selfishness is a bad thing, and you're told that you're selfish, and that's a criticism. Mm. Where does that come from?
Yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh, I haven't sat to think that through. I think it's maybe conditioning. Yeah.
I mean, that's an interesting one, and it's a painful criticism because it's something that we don't allow ourselves to feel. We're hurt by what we deny ourselves. And where does that come
Mm,
from? Why don't you give yourself permission to be selfish, to be self-centered?
yeah,
What would happen if you
yeah,
were?
yeah. I think I'm even afraid to try and really ponder those questions. Well, not afraid, but actually it brings in a sense of brings a sense of, oh my gosh, what would it mean if I was self-centered and selfish? Then maybe would I be a good dad, for example? Would I be a good husband?
Mm-hmm.
And where's the balance between thinking for myself first versus doing things for others? And even if I know that behind all this I'm always selfish and self-centered, then it's a head mess. And just all these thoughts is too much already.
You said a little. I'm going to give you permission. In fact, you can give yourself permission to be selfish right now. Um, you said a little bit earlier you were inspiring, and I believed you. Can you say the same thing about being selfish?
I am selfish.
How does that feel to say that?
Feels weird.
Weird. Yeah, giving ourselves permission
Yeah.
to feel things is a very difficult thing to do, Duncan. especially things that have got a traditionally negative connotation, like being
Yeah.
selfish or being arrogant, or allowing to be amazing, allowing yourself to be inspirational. That's a bit of a self-centered thing to say, but we
Yeah.
get to feel that. We get to do that. We don't have to feel shame around those things.
Yeah.
Say it again for me.
I'm selfish.
Good. And it doesn't have to be bad. You can still be selfish sometimes, and you can still be generous, and you can still be kind. Anyway, this is turning into me talking rather than asking you questions. I apologize about that. Let's move on to another question. So, who would you want holding your hand when you die, Duncan?
That's a difficult question. Probably, I don't know. I mean, my first answer would be my wife and my daughter. But I also don't want to feel the need that I need somebody beside me when I die. Although it would probably be a nice thing to have them beside me. Yeah. Yeah. My wife and my daughter.
Your wife and your daughter.
Yeah. Selfishly.
I'm glad your playful fool is back again, Duncan. Okay. So after you've died, and you get to disappear off somewhere and be reincarnated, and you're going to come back as something or someone. If you could retain one memory from this life, what would that be?
Could that be like a lesson learned from this life, or like a
Sure.
memory?
If you'd
Okay, it could be a
either.
lesson. Okay. So I would think of the lesson that I believe has the biggest impact, or that I've understood that, yeah, the lesson that I think I would love to bring and to know would be that actions speaks louder than words. And yeah, like doing things gets results, not talking about doing things.
Okay.
So I'll take that in, and I'll just make sure it goes into the heart, into the soul, so that it's coming into that reincarnated life. It's done.
Well, I'm pretty sure, Duncan, that lesson will stay with you now in your next life. Now that you've said it out loud. You don't just talk about things, you have to step up and do things as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is an interview about being inspiring. So let's just move on to our last few questions, which really are about being inspiring. So when you were young, and when we're really impressionable and we're growing, we're like a sponge and we're sucking everything in, what or who inspired you then? Little Duncan in Hong Kong speaking French. Tell us about what or who inspired little Duncan in Hong Kong back in the 80s.
It's that's a difficult one. I went through I somehow, for some reason that I haven't discovered yet, I have blocked lots of memories about my young childhood life. And I know that sometime around 12 years old, I went through a difficult, and now I think I'd name it spiritual depression, a deep kind of introspection, realization about, life and death and things like that. And I still haven't really figured out a way to unblock memories before that. So it's really hard for me to know who's inspired, or to have a clear memory of who's inspired me at that age. But when you ask that question, there is a person that pops into my head, and this was when I was maybe 15 or 16 or
Mm-hmm.
17. And it was really magical what this person did. It was the mother of a friend,
Mm-hmm.
and I was doing the equivalence of A levels, I believe. And my grades were below the passing. My mocks or my trials were below the level of being able to pass your A levels. That's how they did it in the French system. So let's say you're supposed to reach 20 is the maximum. You have to have at least 10 to pass. And I was under that by like far, because I wasn't studying, I wasn't interested in school, I wasn't involved for whatever reason. And this one day we were talking about our A levels, and I was with my friend, and her mum was there. We had a couple of months to study before the A levels started, and I don't know exactly what the words were, but I was like, "Oh, I'm never going to be able to pass my A levels." And she looked at me and said, without any form of doubt and with total convictions, she looked at me and said, "Of course you're going to pass your A levels. You're too smart not to." And I don't know. She probably said it with so much heart, with so much truth, you know, that it inspired me to do whatever it takes to get my A levels. It gave me hope that I was actually capable of doing it. And it really like changed my whole brain pattern, because I had to figure out how was I going to be able to pass without having, because in France you're basically having an exam, and the questions of that exams are over a 2-year period of school. So you could have questions that are over these 2 periods on all types of subjects, so maths, history, English, blah, 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 blah. So I needed to remember 2 years worth of school, and I had 3 months to do it. I had to figure out how I was going to do that. But she convinced me I was capable of doing it just with those simple words. So she inspired me to push myself. I don't know how I learned it, but I just passed. I passed the equivalent of my A levels by like a fraction of a fraction of a fraction. But it was crazy that the change that yeah, it was really amazing, really amazing,
Wow, what a powerful experience.
really powerful.
Can you remember her name?
Yeah, her name was Jocelyn.
Jocelyn.
She ended up being my daughter's godmother, and
Mm-hmm.
she's passed away now.
She's passed away.
Yeah, yeah. So she was important.
But her
She inspired me
her legacy still lives on,
so much.
Duncan.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I feel like taking a breath with
There you
Jocelyn.
go. Let's take a breath with Jocelyn.
Thank you, Jocelyn. In the next life, already. So let's move on from little Duncan back in Hong Kong in the 1980s, and let's think about the wise, kind version of you, Duncan, that I see behind you now. So my next question is, what or who inspires you now?
Interesting. You're gonna laugh about this. It's all around the same thing. It's my daughter. She just inspires me to be a better person. One, a better father, but a better role model, and therefore a better person. You know, she's also a really good teacher.
They always are. Kids are the best teachers.
Yeah, she
So she's
inspires me
your
too.
inspiration, and I can really feel that.
Yeah, thank you.
And what if you could choose something that you were going to inspire in other people? You know, like what Martin Luther King inspired. You know, he inspired a whole movement, or organically inspired, so if you could choose what you would inspire in others to happen, or it could be just a feeling, but what would you like to inspire in others?
I would like to inspire people to trust others first before allowing to before having to before being able to trust somebody, to be able to you be trustworthy first. Like to inspire people to just have an open heart and trust other people without needing proof of that trust.
You would like to inspire people to open their hearts and trust. Why did you choose that?
I think it's probably the feeling of when you trust somebody, you feel safe. And it probably comes back to that feeling or that experience of you're allowed to be yourself and you're allowed to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And you're also allowed to make mistakes.
You're allowed to make mistakes and you feel safe.
And it's okay to make mistakes. I love it when people feel safe to make mistakes in front of me, or feel safe to be vulnerable. So that's through the process of trusting. So I try and I would like to inspire people to just feel they can just trust.
You would like to inspire people to trust you and to feel safe with you as well. I'm feeling
Mm-hmm.
that it's okay for people to make mistakes in front of you.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a very powerful thing to inspire, Duncan. Okay, well, just one or two more questions, I think, that I'm going to ask you. Do you have any other stories or experiences about breathwork you would like to share? Anything about breathwork that hasn't been said yet that you would just like to say?
I've been reading a book called Just Breathe, and there are so many ways you can breathe. It's crazy. Why was I going towards that?
And it's crazy. We think we all know how to breathe, because we do it every single moment of our lives, but really.
Yeah. And one thing that I've been doing my best to commit to is to breathe daily 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the evening, and 10 times 2 minutes every day. Every hour, 2 minutes, or 10 times 2 minutes during that period.
Is that with a particular breath technique?
Yeah, it's the conscious connected breathing technique. And there's many breathing techniques that you can do, but I'm trying to do one to get a better experience of how it changes me. Yeah, so I want to breathe for a very long time in this technique so that I can go, oh yeah, this is what it's done to me. So when I talk to other people about it, I come from a place of experience. And this conscious connected breathing, there's been some interesting physiological changes. The one that's really an amazing surprise for me personally is I'm 41 years old. I come from Hong Kong. I hate cold water. Like I've been in Brighton for 10 years, and I did not go in the sea for the first 8 years of those 10 years because in summer the water is too cold for me. Like that's how I don't go in the water. I don't even like going swimming in the pool because they're still too cold for me. If I stop swimming, I start to shiver. Now, in the past 3 months, I've been doing this conscious connected breathing technique. And a few weeks ago, or actually just before, when it was the end of autumn and winter was starting, I was starting to look forward to winter. I've been starting to look forward to the cold. So, and I don't know where that came from. And now I've started to have my normal hot shower, but after my hot shower to have cold showers. And I can't. The only thing that I've been doing regularly on a periodic, regularly every day is this conscious connected breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really interesting because I would have thought I would be the last person who'd ever be interested in trying out cold showers and things like that. But now I'm tempted to do it, which which is really weird. But it's an interesting physiological change, that it's really apparent.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite amazing, you know. Yeah, that's just
Okay.
a little thing.
Changing the cold. Okay. Well, I kind of feel the same because where I am currently, it's about minus 16 degrees outside if I look out my window. Um, so I'm going to go and do some breathing after this to prepare me to. I have to go out and shovel some snow. So I'm going to definitely do some breathing before that. Now, you don't have to answer this question immediately, but I want you to think about this, and you can tell me a little bit later. What question should I ask in these interviews to help people reveal their greatness and how inspiring they are? So that's one for you to think about, and you can tell me that a little bit later. And the final question, it's not really a question, but it's a task. You get to choose who appears next on this interview. Next Thursday at 4 or 5 p.m., we'll go live again with someone in the Breathing Space Inspiring People group, and we'll find out why and how that they are inspiring. But that is your task, to find someone for me to interview. And I want to interview people in this group because I really truly believe that everyone here is inspiring in some way. And I thought I could probably get some big name guests on. I could always get my teacher Anthony from Alchemy of Breath, or Jamie Cato. They both agreed to come on here, but I was thinking about that, and actually I want everyone to realize that they are inspiring, and everyone has that greatness inside of them. So it has to be someone in this Breathing Space Inspiring People group, Duncan, and you obviously have to persuade them. You have to inspire them to step up and be willing to be interviewed live on Facebook, which will then go on YouTube. Are you up to that?
Yeah, totally. I will inspire you to come and talk. So there's no running away or hiding.
Okay, well, let's start to bring this interview to a close. What do we need to say? Any final words, Duncan, before we take a few breaths together and sign off?
No, I can't think. I was going to say just breathe, but
okay. Would you like us to lead us in our final few breaths then?
Okay, let's take 3 breaths. And thank you for listening.
Thank you for Duncan. Thank you, Duncan, for being so inspiring today.
Thank you,
Bye,
Ben.
everyone. See you next week online.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.